Welcome everybody to another video on Khaldor TV. Today we don't really have a commentated game at hand. No, we are doing something completely different. There was a recent patch in Heroes of the Storm and it changed the meta quite significantly. A lot of the heroes' abilities were changed, and we are going to take a closer look today at the tiers of the heroes. Which heroes are the most important ones right now, the ones that you should really focus on when you have a competitive match, the ones that the teams try to either pick or ban. And of course I'm not going to do that on my own. I have one player from mYinsanity with me today here in the video. It is AceOfSpades. Welcome.
Hi.
And yeah, you boys, you actually compiled a list on versasphere.net
Yes.
where everybody can have a closer look at those heroes. So guys, if you are interested in how exactly the list looks, we're going to go over all of those heroes, but it might be interesting for you to actually have that up on a second screen or just look it up later on. The link can be found in the YouTube description, of course, as well, but right now down here you can see it's versasphere.net. There's a drop down for the tier list. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into our first tier, into tier number 1. Those are, of course, the heroes that have the most significant impact on the game right now. So let's check those out. Alright, so here we have the first tier list, or the most banned and picked heroes that we currently see. Once again, just a quick reminder that the entire list is basically the mYinsanity tier list. A lot of the top teams will agree with that, but this is a list that was specially put together by mYinsanity, and we have AceOfSpades to go a bit more into the details. First of all, we're going over all of the heroes real quickly before we go into them more in detail. Of course, for the main DPS, for our AD, the auto attack DPS heroes, we have the Tychus here, we have the Vala, we have with Sonya, and of course also, for example, with the Tyrael, Great Initiation. Falstad was a constant in most of the competitive games so far. Zeratul, especially with the Stitches, always a very dangerous combination as we've seen in past games. And as you can see, we have Uther, Arthas, and also Tacita in that first list. And when you look at the list, for me personally, the first thing that really came to mind is that it's quite interesting to see that we only have a single support in here. Tacita these days is being played mostly as a damage hero. It's not really that support role that he has played at the beginning of Horror Storm. So Ace, what do you say? Why exactly did you guys come up with only a single support hero in there, and why is it Uther?
Because it's the only one that has some abilities, like a cleanse. He's the only support that can pick cleanse. Brightwing can pick it as well, but not without losing more than half of her healing ability. So cleanse is a big part of why Uther is there, plus all his toolkit is just perfect. He has Aoistan, a big burst healing, he can take the shield at level 4. He's just very good all around.
Do you think that Uther, with the change in the last patch, I mean, he did take a bit of a hit, so we don't have rewind on him anymore, which was absolutely amazing for him as a support, but you still have him as a tier 1 hero. Why exactly is that? Do you think that rewind, losing that talent was not such a big deal, or do you think that even without it he's just still so good that you have to have him up there?
It was a big hit, that's true, and you can take another good talent at that level now. You can take Shrink Ray, and if you use it on hyper carries that do a lot of damage, like Barb or Tychus or Tazdar when he's an Archon, the loss from not having a rewind is not that big, but it's still a big loss. If he wasn't nerfed, he will be the best hero.
What do you think would be like a substitute for? Was there any other support hero that at least came close to the tier 1 roster here, where you would say, okay, if I can't get my Uther, then I still have to pick a support hero? What would that be for you?
I think Rhaegar.
Rhaegar? It's quite interesting, because at the beginning Rhaegar was a hero where a lot of the pro teams did really say, like, yeah, we kind of like him, but he doesn't really fill that role just yet. You yourself played Brightwing actually a lot when you couldn't play on your Uther, so you would by now even pick the Rhaegar over a Brightwing pick?
The situation, like Rhaegar can like open you, like you can play different comps with Brightwing and with Rhaegar. Both all the three other supports, Brightwing, Rhaegar, and Malfurion are very good. You just pick them in different situations, different comps. Rhaegar makes you able to run Bloodlust comps with like Raynor, Tychus, Tazdar, those kind of good things.
Focusing a bit more on the tier 1 list that we have here, we're going to talk about the heroes that you just mentioned also a bit later. What would you say is like the most important hero from the entire lineup right now, or the most dangerous one at this point?
Good question. I'd say Tazdar, because he's kinda still has like some support abilities. Tychus is stronger than Tazdar, but with Tazdar you can run like almost any kind of comp. He feels perfectly in any comp. There is never a situation where like Tazdar isn't OP. That's why I like him so much.
Okay, so when you have the Tassadar in there, most of the teams that we see right now try to at least get some auto attack damage into the game as well, and usually it's one of the ranged DPS with Vala or Tychus. Whereas the Tychus has the Odin form, which of course works very well with the Bloodlust, which you already pointed out. What kind of composition does mYinsanity usually run when they take one of these picks?
When we have Tassadar, we like to run Raynor more than Vala or Felstad, if you want to run Bloodlust, for example. The best thing for us to pick Uther with Tassadar. We really like those kind of double support kind of comp with a lot of sustain, because we really like to run with beefy front lines.
These days we actually see a lot of the games where Zeratul either plays a big role or is one of the heroes that is immediately banned. Why do you think exactly that is? What makes Zeratul as a hero so dangerous?
I think it's because of Void Prison. And we don't really like much of Zeratul, but it's still regarded it's still a very good pick. It's not in our personal meta. It's just Void Prison, so powerful, simply that.
One of the heroes that you have also up in the list of there is the Tyrael, and for me personally, I would really like to have your take on the hero itself. We saw the games that you played against El Nexo in the final of the European versus Sphere tournament, and it seemed like, especially in the first two games, you really struggle a lot against the initiation with the judgment. Do you think that Tyrael is right now one of the best initiators in the game to pick off a hero and turn it into 4 versus 5, or where would you see his role currently in the metagame?
I think that he's very strong, but the reason is that he's in Tier 1 is that so many people rely on him, and so taking away Tyrael from a team makes that team just so much less strong. That's why. It's just super easy to play.
If you would look at the rest of the heroes in there, we have, for example, the Falstad. And Falstad is one of those heroes where a lot of players that I talked so far have said that they don't really like the damage that he dishes out with the auto attack just yet. He's more of someone where you really like to put the shock and awe in, the boomerang with the hammer. Do you feel that he's really still one of the heroes that you kind of have to play with, or is he one of the heroes that starts to drop off a bit?
He's kind of the only full caster in the game that isn't a specialist. I don't really like Felstad as well anymore. I feel that it doesn't really fit in what we play, but a lot of people still like him. So.
Yeah, you see him actually quite a lot, and the same is true for also Arthas. Arthas and also Sonya that we have still in the Tier 1 list here kind of fulfill similar roles in the game. What's your personal pick? What does mYinsanity usually play? Are you a team that relies more on Arthas? We see Lowell play Arthas a lot, if I remember correctly. Or do you rather think that a Sonya with initiation into the leap and the Ancient Spear is someone that you would rather have in your composition?
I rather have Arthas because he's way more beefy, and his root is more reliable than Sonya's ultimate. So if we can pick Arthas over Barb, we always go for that.
If you look at the Tier 1 list right now, is there any hero in the Tier 2 list, which we're going to have a look at in just a few seconds, that you really had problems where you said, okay, is that really a Tier 2 hero? Should I rather put it into the Tier 1 list? Which are the heroes that you were really on the fence?
I will put Felstad on. If it was just this tier list, can regroup the thoughts of what it's been played in both NA and in EU at the same time. If it was up to me only, I will put Felstad and Vala in Tier 2 and put Zagara in Tier 1, because Zagara is so much more powerful in my opinion.
Why Vala actually? Because Vala is quite interesting. Vala is one of the most high DPS in the game, but another thing that I realized in the last few weeks, I would say, is that a lot of Vala players actually start to go back from Strafe back to Reign of Vengeance once again. And I talked with a couple of them, and a lot of them just said, yeah, it's getting very difficult to land the Strafe ultimate without being interrupted, and that's why they just go for the Reign of Vengeance again. Not because they necessarily think that the stun is the better option, but because it's one of those drop and forget ultimates that you just throw in and then you can continue your fight. Do you think that makes Vala fall off a little bit, or is there a different reason why you don't like her as much anymore?
The reason we don't really like that is because in EU people likes to run more beefy front lines with even instead of 2. Sometimes in the US they mostly run with 1 frontliner, and in EU we like 2 and sometimes even 3 frontliners. If you have very beefy comps with high HP, Vala is not that strong, and if someone reaches her, Chen is not that powerful of a hero, but if he's on Vala, she's gonna have a bad time in team fights. So that's why I think they pick Rain of Vengeance.
Okay, fair enough. Is there a hero in the tier 2 list that you thought might deserve a spot in the tier 1, but didn't really put him there yet for some reason?
Zagara. I think Zagara is heavily underused in both EU and NA. I see that after we started picking her a lot in EU, people are starting to play her more. And I think that it's coming also in the US very soon, that people will start to play a lot of Zagara. She's just super good.
Okay, awesome point. I mean, let's talk about Zagara a bit more, but let's look at the tier 2 list in its full first and see what kind of heroes mYinsanity seems like very strong still in the situational position, Zagara being one of them. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So with the tier 1 list, we have like quite a nice setup there, but let's just head over and have a great look at what's going on in the tier 2 list from mYinsanity. Okay, with the tier 2 list that we see here, we have suddenly a lot more heroes that really are in a position where they maybe will have a chance of just jumping into tier 1 at some point. Zagara we already talked about with the Brightwing. We scratched at Brightwing a bit as a replacement for Uther, but the Rhaegar currently the hero that is picked the most. I feel that Malfurion is currently climbing up those ranks a bit. You see him also a bit more in the competitive play. Stitches, a constant that we had especially in the last few weeks up to when the patch took Sprint away from the hero. The Reyna also making a bit of a comeback. As Ace pointed out, it's a hero that works very well also with the Bloodlust combination. Nazebo, depending on the ultimate a lot. Diablo, still lacking on the hit points on the damage side a bit, but a great disruptor. Same as Chen. That's actually one of the newest additions to the lineup, so we're going to talk about him too. Illidan suddenly in the tier 2 list for mYinsanity. That's actually a very interesting pick. But before we come back to Illidan, let's talk a bit more about Zagara. Where do you see Zagara's role? Because we see a lot of teams that play him as a pusher. Other teams say, okay, it's more the DPS that I want to have in the game. We have with the Creep Tumor some great visibility on the map. What do you think makes Zagara just so good right now?
She has high DPS, damage per second, like straight up damage per second, constant damage, and she can kill tanks quite fast, and her ultimate can win a team fight, or can lose it if you use it bad. She can win a team fight, so that's why she's so good.
In terms of the combination that we have there, which hero climbed up the most? I mean, for me, it was a bit surprising to see, for example, the Illidan there, since Illidan is still a hero where everybody says, like, he's so squishy, it's very, very difficult to really keep him alive, and you kind of need to make sure that you have a couple of supports that really focus on him. Why do we have him in the tier 2 list now for you guys?
A lot of people, yesterday we played HPL, and people were surprised when we ran Illidan and won. Thing is, Illidan is not that bad at all. He's squishy, but he's kind of tanky. It's one of those heroes that he either stays full HP or just drops down in half a second. It's very hard to understand. You need, I think, a good support that knows when to heal you up and keep your cooldowns for him. Against auto attackers like Tychus, Tazdar, Raynor, he actually is quite strong. So that's why he's decent now, with so much focus on Tazdar and Tychus.
Well, which one of those heroes that we have in the tier 2 list is the one that you feel is the most exciting one right now in terms of the role that he has?
I think Illidan, because it's so underused and it's so... Yeah.
You think we're going to see him a lot more in the foreseeable future?
I think so. I think so, yes. I think the meta will be switching to like a more beefy frontliners.
Okay. Talking about beefy frontliners, what do you think about Chen? Newest addition in the patch, is that a hero where you can see mYinsanity picking him up in one of the combinations?
If the enemy team has multiple targets for Chen to go on, like Malfurion, Valla, Felstad, two of those, like Witch Doctor, he's very good. Otherwise, not so much. His Keg ultimate is very powerful though, as a teamfight disruptor.
Yeah, that thing just pisses me off on a random basis when I go up against the Chen. Like, that thing is so annoying. What do you think about his second ultimate? Do you think that, like, one of the things that people criticize is that you can't control those pandas individually? Do you miss that?
No, I think the problem is that damage is so low that not very. It's like Odin before the buff, which is like just a second health bar. That's all it is.
When we look at the tier 2 list, we also have the we have Stitches now in tier 2, and Stitches is a hero, as I mentioned earlier, who lost Sprint. Is that the reason why you guys put him down?
Yes, because Like, you can see that Witch Doctor is higher, Stitches is lower. That's because Stitches used to counter Nazeebo just so well. He could sprint and Q stun Nazeebo on his ultimate, and Nazeebo was out of the game. So Nazeebo is stronger because Stitches is weaker, and so I still see a lot of Stitches banned because people play him so well. Some people are so good with skill shot and hooks. He can still win a game, so he's still on tier 2.
Okay. What's the reasoning behind the Diablo here? Diablo is like quite the force. He's super tanky, but a problem that most teams always like talked about is like he doesn't do as much damage as we would like. So why do you have him here in the tier 2 list now?
He's played still quite a bit in the US. Almost no one runs him in Europe. It's more like a respect a respect thing that we put in tier 2. If it was only for EU teams and for us, he will be tier 3. We still recognize, like we can still see that he's good if the enemy has tier barb combinations, for example.
So you put Diablo in there because ZP plays him?
Most likely, yes. No, just kidding. He's still good against some comps. When they have like a lot of frontliners and strong engages, Sonya, Tyrell, he's still good.
One of the things that I find really interesting is that we see so much Reyna right now, and you talked already a bit about Reyna making a comeback. What do you think are the biggest reasons for that? Is it only the Rhaegar with the Bloodlust, or what else makes Reyna better these days?
Well, a lot of champions got nerfed, and not many got buffed, which makes heroes like Raynor and Illidan get better, just because everyone else got worse. And Raynor was never bad to begin with, I think, and I think he was just underused. His auto-attack damage at level 10 is much higher than Tazdar in Archon. He gives movement attack speed to the team. The Banshee can chase quite a bit. His numbers are good. He's kind of tanky with his passive. There's really nothing bad about Raynor. People just thought that he wasn't that good.
Talking about all the heroes that we have here, and maybe going back a bit to what the patch changed, can we agree that Brightwing probably took the biggest hit from the change?
I think so, yes. I think Brightwing got the biggest hit.
So is that one of the reasons why you would prefer the Rhaegar now over the Brightwing? Because one of the things that, of course, with Brightwing always worked very well, and mYinsanity has been using that a lot, was the mobility and just the option of having Brightwing on the 3-lane map, on the top lane, jumping into the team fight and just moving back. That gave you just a lot of versatility and flexibility in those fights. Does that role fall off for him? Is that the reason why you say, okay, you start preferring a Rhaegar over him, or is it more than only the patch change?
No, it's the patch change. We don't prefer Rhaegar over Brightwing. We pick Brightwing or Rhaegar depending on the team comps. If we have like Tazdar and Raynor, we might prefer a Rhaegar. If we have like only Tazdar and no second ranged DPS, we pick probably Brightwing. So,
what do you think? Which hero benefited the most from the patch changes?
From the patch changes. That's hard to say. I don't think anyone. I think Illidan actually, definitely Illidan.
How so?
Because not having so much healing going on helps him. Because a lot of people think that he hits like a fly. He doesn't have that much damage, to be honest. But with much less healing on the board right now, his damage is more important, and he can stick to the target and keep going.
When we're talking about the Illidan, what kind of ultimate do you run? We've seen most teams so far focus on Metamorphosis, but a lot of teams have argued that it's better to go for Hunt, since it's more about like picking one hero off the map and trying to turn or give your team an advantage. What do you think is currently the better meta choice?
Illidan is labeled as an assassin, which he's not. If you try to play him as an assassin with the Hunt, he's gonna die. He's super squishy if you run like that. The other ultimate makes him kind of tanky, so that's the reason. Like, if he has extra HP and movement speed, he gets more tanky and can stay more in the fight, makes him stronger. That's, I think, the only ultimate you can run, unless you run weird comps.
Okay, cool. So let's just go over to the tier 3 list, have a look at the tier 3 heroes that we have here. We already went through tier 1 and tier 2, probably the most important tiers now for the team compositions that we currently see. But of course there are a couple of heroes left, so let's have a closer look at those. Okay, so coming back to the tier 3 heroes, we have actually a lot of specialists down here now. We have the Hammer, we have the Tinker, the Abathur, Tyrande dropped off a bit now, we have ETC in there, Muradin, and also Nova. So why do we see so many specialists in the tier 3 lineup?
I think most of those specialists got nerfed in some ways during the patches. Gazlo got nerfed, Hammer got nerfed in the last patch. Abathur got a couple of nerfs as well. That might be a reason. They don't really feel a role that well anymore.
Abathur is one of the heroes that people love, especially in public. He's like a super fun hero, he's very, very different. Do you feel that there are certain combos where you can run an Abathur
Yes.
where it makes sense? Let's say with an Illidan, for example, to keep him alive longer. What would you say where an Abathur just suddenly starts to make sense?
If you have Titus, I think he is always a viable pick. Thing is, when you use his ultimate, you don't have talents, so you really need an hero that doesn't benefit much from talents. Titus, when he's in Odin, he doesn't benefit much from talents. Copying Titus with Abathur, it's a viable option always.
What about a hero like Gazlo? Is Gazlo a hero where you say, okay, why is he in the tier 3 or say? He was for quite a long time, he was picked because of his wombo combo with the stuns. He was played as a jungler to make sure that there's always like a lot of pushing going on. Why do we have him in the tier 3 right now?
That's a good question. Thing is, you kind of need a setup for Gazlo, whether it is like Zeratul or Barb. The numbers of his damage, of his wombo combo are not that high, to be honest. And people learn to dodge or like position themselves better at high level of play, so it's much harder to hit a good ultimate. He gets good at level 20. Before that, he's not so good.
Which of those heroes do you think has the potential to go up into the second tier?
I think Sergeant Hammer, there is a spec that is viable for her to be played in certain situations. We call it tanky tank, where basically we pick tank. Okay, we pick like regeneration and stone skin. We play her like a kind of a tank, and her damage is of auto attacks per second. Is not that lower from Reynor, so she's kind of a weaker version of Reynor to the way we play her.
What about a hero like Nova? For a long time she was used as more of a combo damage dealer, trying to maybe use that even, well, we saw those combos where you hook him in with the stitches, you try just burst one hero down. Doesn't she fill that role anymore? Why is she a hero that on that DPS is still this low for you? You saw some videos of us playing Stitches Zeratul with Nova pick comps. That kind of comps requires you to play so perfectly. So basically you have to play perfect while the enemy team can still make some mistakes. And those kind of things are never viable in competitive play. Super high skill cap comps can rarely be picked against opponents of your level. We have still two heroes that are not in this list because they're actually your tier 4 list. I'm not going to put those overlays in right now, but let's talk about them real quick. There's only two of them. It's Murky and Lily. Why Murky and Lily? Why are they so bad?
Lily has her numbers for her healings are so low, and the ultimate can be interrupted so easily. So basically, she doesn't have an ultimate. Murky could be in 3-3, to be honest. We play it sometimes against some teams. Most of it just for fun. He's 75% of a real hero of tier 2. That's kind of Murky.
Okay.
And there are we have some combinations that are fun to say with Murky. He's still bad though.
So you don't see him making his way up the ranks and ending up in tier 1 anytime soon?
You might see a Murky in some of our plays for HPL in the near future though.
Is that the pick against teams that you don't respect?
That's not really that, but if we think that we can still win with kind of certain that we can still win, we can pick Murky. It's not about being disrespectful to the enemy team, but we still like to have fun, and Murky is a lot of fun.
When you look at tier 3 lists, is there any hero that sticks out for you where you think we should talk about him, or where he could be pretty good if there were one or two changes?
We already talked about Sergeant Hammer. I think that with few changes, she could be tier 2 easily. I think ATC can be used sometimes. It's mostly situational, yes. If the enemy team doesn't have a good CC for ATC ultimate, he can still be very viable, I think.
Okay, so, well, first of all, Ace, thank you very much for going through the list a bit.
Sure.
Guys, once again, go to versussphere.net if you want to see the full list, and if you also want to see a few more explanations that Ace already wrote down. If you can, you can actually just write comments into the YouTube video as well. Just talk a little bit about what you think about the list, what kind of choices or other choices you would have made, where you disagree, where you agree, especially in regards to the change that we had in the last patch. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and also let us know if you would like to see more of those patch and hero tier discussions in the foreseeable future. If there's a demand for it, we'll definitely come back together again and talk about it. So thanks for watching the video. Ace, once again, thanks for talking to me, and
thank you for having me.
No worries, anytime, and I guess we're going to see you guys soon. Have a good day, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.